Do you want to?
Yes, so thank you all for coming. This is the first show that we've done as the Blockchain Art Exchange, first exhibition. We had the opening night last night. Everything that you see in the room is available with a token as a certificate of authenticity or a NFT. The theme of the show in general is kind of Renaissance and beauty. Every single piece has something which connects to the Renaissance period, and then a lot of it is quite Baroque in design. Yeah, it's been a fantastic show. I'm so happy you could come, and we're going to have like a little talk with all of the artists. Check out blockchainartexchange.com, where you can purchase all of the artwork directly in primary sale, or head to OpenSea. We're featured on the front page, so very easy to find. And make some offers with Nifty, and we'll see who accepts it. All right, pass it over to Sarita.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everyone. I will have to stand next to the screen because I'll have to go through the slides, but I hope you don't mind that. You can all see. So, thank you for coming tonight, and I'm very happy to have you all here. And I am joined by Marianne, who is the Managing Director of Atea, and Dominic, who's the CTO at MoCDA, and Chloe, Curator and Social Media and Events Manager at MoCDA as well.
And who are you, Serena?
And me. I'm the founder of MoCDA and CTO alongside, CEO alongside Dominic as co-director. I'm just going to start on the slides. Okay. So I was going to give you an introduction about MoCDA, who we are, what we do. So essentially, we wanted to build a museum for contemporary and digital art because it doesn't exist. There's multiple galleries, but not really an institution that could provide education, promotion, and information about what digital art is, how artists do create digital art, and how this is traded on different platforms such as blockchain, and talking about NFTs as well. So what we do, we connect with artists, we see and explore how they create art in their studio. We build technologies such as smart contract to provide artists with an easier access to define their own copyrights and earn from royalties, which Dominic will explain further. And then we do events. So you see me here, I was talking at the Tate last November. We've done an event alongside Nam June Paik exhibition at the Tate, and we were responding at that show, bringing together Dada Collective with 13 artists drawing on the online platform at the same time from different parts of the world, and explaining what digital art is and how does it work online. And we were also joined by Robbie Barrett, who uses GAN to create his generative artwork. So this is what we do in a nutshell. But what is MoCDA? So MoCDA is a museum of contemporary digital art, and we promote the understanding, enjoyment, preservation and protection of anything that is digital art. We educate around the research and the technology. We like to connect, such as this event is a good way to bring people together and talk about art and technology. And we want to innovate. And so Dominic will give you a short insight about technology. And actually, if I can pass it on to Chloe and Dominic, if you want to tell us more about what we do in terms of the education and the technology, and introduce yourself a little bit, give us a bit of background.
Yeah, absolutely. I go first. I come from a technical background predominantly, but I got quite an interest in art because of my family. I come from, both my mother and my father are into art, artists actually. So I came about this idea of producing a number of tools because I see that in the digital space there's a number of tools already available, but there's a lot that is missing still. And what is missing, according to my understanding, is what Serena mentioned, a way to protect and trade your digital art. Protected in the sense that a collector needs to be comfortable in terms of the purchase that he's going through, and he needs to be sure that what he has purchased doesn't come up on another network or gets copied without him knowing about it. So this has yet to be consolidated in this market, as well as identification. Identification is another element that the market is struggling to deliver at this stage. This goes into a variety of form of art that can be stored digitally, and I can go into further detail later, but I give some room to go into this.
Yeah, so basically I kind of came into it from the tech side as well, in that I was working more with mainly companies using emerging technologies, so like blockchain and AI predominantly. But alongside that, I was studying history of art, so I was kind of doing these two things in parallel. And then within the tech space, I kind of felt that there was a lot of, there's kind of a gap where people felt that it was quite exclusive and it's difficult to access, and art kind of has the same problem, which is why I quite like the idea of even this exhibition, because you have these two worlds sort of coming together. And yeah, I'm just I'm excited to sort of bring everything together and sort of bring some new conversations as well. So, yeah.
So yes, that's what we do. We educate, connect, and innovate. And alongside that, we've collaborated with CADAF, which is the Contemporary Digital Art Fair. So they've announced just a few days back the third CADAF, which will be in Paris in June. What we did for CADAF was a really interesting collaboration, because it's the only art fair of its kind, bringing together digital art in an art fair space. And we've selected the entry for the open call. So me and Stina, who's another curator based in Berlin, we went through all the open call submissions, and we selected about 15 works that then made it to the art fair in Miami during Miami Art Week back in December, and Vesa also attended, so it was nice to see. Yeah, as you can see, it was a great success. There was one in New York, and the next one will be in Paris. And if there's any artists in the room, the opening call is on the website, so you can go on and submit your work. And I may see you in Paris then. And we also collaborated with the Tate, so this is to give you a background about the kind of events and how we try and bring art into locations. So we're thinking about how does a museum of the future look like, and because national museums have declared climate emergency, which is a pressing subject for all museums, how do we sort of incentivize more people to browse art online, and how do we make this more sustainable? So in a way, we try and do events and bring people both online and to physical locations in a way that it's easier for art to be seen and for people to be more knowledgeable and educated about digital art and the artists that create the works. So in this show, as a response to the Namjoon Paik, we had Robbie Barrett attending. We had Dada, and there's a short video coming after that to show you how 13 artists from different parts of the world came together to draw. And then we had a talk about the future of art and technology, and you can see Chloe in the panel as well. And as part of this event, we had the Dada Gun, which was a collaboration between Alexander Reben and Dada, which is a robot drawing and learning from what the artists were producing in the room and responding to that. So that was a really clever exercise. So there's a short video here which I'm going to play just to give you a background of how the event went. So there were artists drawing in the room live, and you can see the conversation. Okay, and this is what happened at Tate last November. So we're looking to do more collaborations with them and more events. Then we recently launched this series called In the Studio, and as part of this series, what we do, we go and see how artists create digital art in their studio, which sometimes it is a real studio, but sometimes it's also a Starbucks coffee, and we just use a tablet or an iPad or something like that. We started the series with Akatao, for which we also produced a limited edition. Went to visit Joanne in Canada and Travis in New York. And there's more interviews to come. So if you want to take a look, head over to our website and read more about how digital artists create art. And that's a good way for us to bring more education around the space. As part of the In the Studio series, we also created this short video about Akatao, which is an artist duo that lives in Italy, in the middle of nowhere. And this is kind of how they live and how they produce digital art and how they make a living out of digital art.
Not this.
These are their kids, yes.
This doesn't look very digital. Okay.
They produce art on canvas, which they then tokenize, animate, and create AR as well. And this is kind of how they do it. So we went to visit them and we made this short video to show how they bring more traditional art into the digital world.
So it's fair to say that they combine physical and digital art?
Yes, they do. And if you want to see the actual editions, we've got them with us tonight, so you can try the AR as well. And these are the editions, so they come in a portfolio with a certificate, which is, as museums do, they get it signed and numbered by the artist, so we're trying to merge the physical and the digital world together as a collectible. And this is the AR animation, which they have created on top of the Art Never Dies work, which you can activate when you use an app to see the limited edition print, which I can show you later. And now I'm going to pass it on to Marianne, who's here tonight and joined us. MoCDA and AIS made this partnership recently around the art identification standards because there were so many different companies and so many different efforts put towards creating different, let's say, introducing different technologies that we were not really communicating to each other. And so we decided that it was about time to build something that Marianne has this great idea, and she can tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, so firstly I would like to qualify myself as non-tech. So if you have any particular questions that relate to technology, I will take notes and then revert online or digitally, one way or the other. Art identification standard vision is to develop a single standard for identifying artworks, whether they are digital, paper, any form of them. And as you highlighted, the objective there is multifold. The benefits are to avoid duplication of data. What happens historically is that you have a lot of repositories of information about a particular artwork, but it's disseminated, it's truncated, it's not necessarily reflective of the reality. And when it comes to getting information about that artwork, it takes a long time, a lot of efforts. And it's not necessarily accurate. So the idea there is to create a single little ID that is not going to contain the information that is available already, or may come in the future, but that little ID is going to be a beacon against which the existing custodians of information can attach their information. So they will say, okay, I have a pot of information and I'm going to use that ID to make the world know that I have something that is available. No, this is not going to qualify the quality of the information. It could be anything. It's just flagging the existence of information that is claiming that they have a link to the object itself. So that's the vision. And it looks simple, but actually when you look at data that is available in the art market, it's a very asymmetric environment. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's very complicated to get access. It can be onerous. There is a lot of uncertainty as well. We're talking about fakes, we're talking about people who are trying to get too much information, too much value from something because they are playing the opacity of the sector. So the value for the artist, because I'm expecting I'm talking to artists mainly here, is to protect your studio content, but also to look at what is happening on the primary and secondary market. So we have some artists who have signed up already to the standard, which is currently at the early stage of development, just to be clear. But for them, who have been in the market for 30, 50 years, there are issues such as artworks which have been stolen. And so they sometimes get presented with an artwork that is genuinely theirs, but they can't acknowledge because they know that it has been stolen or not paid in the past. You have galleries who are underselling. There are a number of issues that are related to the primary and secondary market that are really an obstacle for artists to gain autonomy. As you may have heard, more and more artists are looking at isolating themselves from the gallery system and going straight to the market. So direct B2 collector. So the benefit for the artist will be that they can identify the artworks and anchor that on the blockchain with some protocols again to make sure that there is legitimacy in what has been introduced as a new object on the blockchain. That is a very important aspect. But also being able to track what's happening and putting potentially some conditions as well. If it comes straight from the studio, they could have some smart contracts. Yeah.
Sorry, so is this like a replacement for NFTs, or is this kind of something that you see working in tandem with NFTs?
The NFTs is one thing.
Yeah.
This is not a replacement because NFT is an object.
Yeah.
It's a way of saying the NFT exists and it's recognized and it belongs to that artist which has been created at that time and that is circulating on these conditions. So this is not a replacement. This is something that is not competing with existing systems, existing business models. The initiative is not for profit. Okay, and it's a consortium of industry players.
Yeah. Is that going to be something like an asset passport?
It will be like the ID that you have on your passport. So a passport contains many pages, and then you have an image of yourself. You will have when you were born, when it has been registered, the citizenship, and so forth. And you have a little number that is giving you the number of the passport. But this is not containing everything. So it's part of the digital passport that will be attached to the
And this taxonomy meant to be adopted by all the bodies.
Sorry, I can't hear because of
this taxonomy meant to be adopted by all the bodies across.
The objective is that. So when we launched the London Art Fair a few weeks ago, we had reached about 20. I mean, we have a consortium of 20 players already, mostly technological. But the ambition is to engage with the classic players, traditional players, so galleries. We had a representative from, you can see, Gimpel is a fourth generation of art dealers, both in the UK and France, and an institution in the traditional art world, and he's completely up for it. So the objective is now we have identified the objectives, we have a critical mass, we are establishing working groups. Some working groups will be dealing with technical aspects, but some are dealing with outreach, marketing, education, legal aspects. And we want to engage with a wider and wider community of artists, but also all the stakeholders of the art world, to make sure that there is a buy-in on the concept and that it becomes the norm and the standard internationally. Yes.
Just to maybe reframe this, are you effectively verifying the authenticity of the body creating the NFT?
We will have. You're right. There is a what we call author notification, or the person who is entitled to create the ID attached to the object will be checked. So there will be a protocol, and that's the reason why we're going to start with contemporary art. Contemporary art. It's easier, it's less contentious because you have a living person behind it. But even in that context, we know that there are conflicts, there are issues about artists sometimes disowning their work or not remembering and so forth. So there will be protocol that is one of the key aspects to ensure that the object is attached to the real person. But
And
we're
you'll
not
be saying it's the real person.
the real person, yes. But we will not authenticate the artwork or provide provenance information. That will be for the market to organize themselves.
Sorry, extension to that question.
Yes.
Would this will authenticate the chain of custody? For example, the arts are getting moved across countries for the trade fair and art galleries.
It will be, but it will not be the task of the consortium. It will be the task of businesses.
But this will provide some kind of
That will
information.
enable you to track it.
Yeah.
So if you were to be a collector and you want to know whether this artwork is on the chain, on the system, you can go and check. And then it will point out to those who have volunteered to say that they have information about it.
This is huge.
And then you will engage with these people, whether it's open information, or whether you have to pay, or whether it's not accessible. You will have a range of options. There will be business models as well to check the quality of these
But chain
various.
of custody is like one huge thing that everybody, the big problem that when you get like high price art to move around for fairs, galleries and stuff like that.
Yes.
And at the given point of time, you have that. And who's
So,
responsible?
There will be business models where we'll be offering this system, this our service, but we're not going to track it. We're just going to be giving you the ID, which will be integrated into a variety of in the landscape itself. Yes.
So would this be like someone would register an artwork and say they've tokenized it on our platform? It would say tokenized on BA on your standards, so that they would be able to look that up and say, for instance, if someone found the same artwork tokenized through another contract, they would be able to tell that the artist has said that no, this is the real one.
Yes.
This one, okay.
Yes. 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 So there is a digital print that will be.
Can I also bring about an example of how it integrates from the technical perspective? So, for instance, matching a physical work of art with an NFT is a challenge.
Yeah.
So it's one of the challenges that I briefly mentioned before. So it's one of the areas that needs to be covered more, and this is a challenge even for digital art. But for the physical art, as part of the member of the consortium, there's also a technology that can track down tagged NFC via mobile phones, or even we have a member of the consortium that provides a technology that derives from the recognition of banknotes that can sample on the surface of a painting by scanning 3 samples with an ordinary mobile phone. You can identify it to a
So you have the traditional technology of RFIDs, that's working, but the RFID itself will have the AIS element that will tell the person who's reading the information that this work is being registered. So you provide additional comfort for whoever is going to interact with the object.
Is there another question?
Yeah,
There was a question.
There was a hand raised.
Oh, there.
It's just more about the standards.
Yeah.
I'm an engineer. I'm very familiar with ISOs, BS
Yeah.
standards, things like that, and the process it takes to go through those.
Yes.
How do you expect to standardise this?
Currently there is nothing. So the
and I
first.
think the problem is you're going to interact with a lot of different platforms, a lot of different ecosystems.
Yes.
That's going to be a big challenge for you, especially working with this sector in the non-profit sector.
Yeah, so we're not going to contain information per se that is already available in other systems. We have museums having systems, gateways with their own standards. There are a number of existing initiatives that have been there for a long time, which are about describing the artwork or documenting the artwork. We're not doing that. What we are doing is we have an anchoring information, and then you have an ecosystem of information that can plug in. And then for you, it's like a traffic lighting system. It's okay to have that. Whoever wants to volunteer a bridge between their set of information and that AIS ID can volunteer. So we're not going to replace, we're not going to compete. That's very important for adoption.
But if you have any more questions, please head online. This is the website right there. So we launched a few weeks back at the London Art Fair, and we're more than happy to, answer any question from you guys. And Marianne will be here
Yes.
this evening. And yes, get in touch if you do have questions about this initiative, which I think is very exciting for the artists, but also for the tech people in the room. And moving forward from this, I also wanted to introduce this project that we're currently running alongside Massimo Franceschetti, who's a researcher at the University of Udine in Italy. And we've been looking at prestige and success in digital art, specifically looking at the artworks on the super rare collection. And what we came up with is that the works selected by curators that potentially could go in a museum collection versus the works most liked or bidded by collectors were not really the same. So we were looking at how collectors engage with works and how would curators engage with works and which works will end up maybe in a museum collection. And we came up with some really interesting stats which we'll now bring together and give a visual output. So keep looking on the museum platform and Super Rare, because you will soon be seeing an exhibition made out of 10 works, which will be the top 10 works selected by curators and by the crowd that has been collecting the works. So that'll be a quite interesting experiment that will bring a visual outcome. And yes.
Just maybe I missed it already, I'm not sure, but one of the problems is I started creating high-resolution digital originals 12 years ago, and none of these services, no blockchain or nothing was available, and that's been a massive problem for me, is that I've had to hold some of the files in bank vaults, and multiple hard drives have broken, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's like what's exceptional about Sasha's platform is that you hold the actual digital original files, and that's been a major worry of mine. That if right now my files that are in the bank vault are in Finland, and I haven't been updating my collection there for the last 3 years or something, so that now if, God forbid, the house would burn down, that'd be a very bad scene for me at the moment. So will you have some sort of a equivalent service of where some works that you would accept into the roster would be protected? Because that would be a massive concern. Like you were saying, how do you...
pass that to Dom.
No, definitely. There's a number of blockchain initiatives that are focusing on storage. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on one at the moment on behalf of a customer that I don't think it's appropriate to mention here, but these guys use such technology called Blockwave, which is an extension of our blockchain. So effectively, is a blockchain with sampling on previous blocks. And this sampling is used as an incentive for ledgers to replicate this block. So effectively, you end up with a distributed storage with an incentive for miners to keep coming. No, it's not. No. And even if you guessed it right, I don't think it's appropriate to mention it. It's a commercial working for in that sense. And however, yeah, there is that, and these are IPFS, for instance, which you know very well. Yeah, definitely a number of storages. Also, cloud providers, they have redundant storages such as S3 or
It still doesn't solve my problem per se, because essentially what I'm trying to look for is that if you have a commercial solution that would store those files, it's badly incentivized for the actual purpose of what I would like to have them, is that especially the important pieces that I feel that I've done, that they would be on some sort of a third-party custodial, that should something happen to me, those works will be preserved, and those who've collected from me are going to be safe in, because one of the things that guarantees my work and why people can't really screw with me is that they don't have the high-resolution digital files, and I've got multiple different ways of layering so that they truly become mine.
Okay.
And that's one of the ways that I'm trying to figure out and how to coordinate.
It's a tension between two features that you are interested in. One feature is to replicate it as much as possible so that if the house burns down, you are sure that there is a replica. And also you want to ensure that you have access, or the collector that has purchased it from you only.
Right.
The high definition image. Yeah, definitely. There's. I think at present there is a technology to respond to that.
Right.
And there's a number of areas where I think the technology is not yet providing sufficient answer, and I was mentioning before, identification is one of them. So,
Sorry to keep
Yeah.
arguing.
No, that's not
But
a problem.
the reason why I found the museum idea so interesting is that there would be, given that I would be allowed access to that, there would be someone who, from a museum point of view, non-commercial interest, would store those files and have them secure for other reasons, any other than a collector or anyone who would be financially incentivized. They'd be more incentivized for the historic aspect of those works existing and being protected for a certain. And they wouldn't have like, okay, so if the file leaks and then they can internally reproduce it and screw everything that I've done. So that's why I would find that would be super valuable as a service.
definitely, yeah.
This is definitely one of our goals, to build a collection that reflects exactly these issues. It's an ongoing work, but yeah, we're definitely looking at bringing these kind of structure in place.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
There is also a cost behind that, so we need funders.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to an extent, if I might play the devil's advocate against what you're saying, you're talking about a museum which you identify as a centralized way of handling things, while all this movement is about decentralization, which I'm not arguing in favor of, but just for you to be aware that decentralization and distribution is a good strategy to preserve digital art, because these replicas get distributed all over the place, as long as you have the control. When you talk to a museum that should provide you with a platform with high redundancy, similar to S3, you're talking about a different thing. Just for you to be aware.
No, I get it. And maybe it should be an actual AI that is programmed in order to maintain it somehow in a decentralized shared file system, something. But that's speaking of myself very grandiose at the moment, trying to say that there should be that thing. Yeah. But as a platform, that idea would be whatever protects it best, I suppose, would be.
Absolutely.
We actually do something relatively similar to that already. So we have on our tokens, we have a large file which is connected, and only the person who bought the file is able to actually access that command on the blockchain. Every time it sells, that file location is changed. Of course, that doesn't stop people downloading it and keeping that one, but then you can use certain fingerprinting methods to solve that too.
One of the questions we had is not necessarily the file related to an artwork, but the information related to an artwork. We have been told, well, there are companies that are producing content, and what happens when these companies go burst and go down? So we were asked whether AIS will be able to provide a vault, like a seed bank, which will be dedicated to orphan content, so that it will be tapped in the future. And this is not what we're planning to do right now, but this is something that is in the mind of people, bearing in mind the not necessarily the dramatic event that could happen to a storage place, but to the fact that the company itself may not be able to maintain the content that we're in charge of. So, space to watch.
Yeah,
Great place to be right now.
I think it's even closer than you think. I mean, we are in very near reach of the features that you require, as opposed to other areas which I briefly mentioned, but that I think are still struggling to provide a concrete answer. For example, identification.
Well, that's 95% more answer than I've gotten in 12 years. So.
That's a good start.
Just before we move on, sorry, the problem was storage on blockchain. Is that proof of provenance based on large
For example,
file
these still, ever so frustratingly for me, most of my colleagues still don't know that these are actually the originals are digital files that are large, and then I had to find a way to reproduce them in certain ways into physical form so I could monetize them, because blockchain wasn't a thing when I first started it. And of course, there was multiple other problems, but it really is that because you couldn't monetize it, there was no interest, therefore there's no services like this, there's no museums being built, and it wasn't taken seriously because no one could make money out of it. So essentially, with the innovation of blockchain, now it's exploding everywhere, and finally the solutions that I've needed for a long time are starting to be built by serious people, which is so wonderful that I can't even, that's such a great thing.
Cool.
Okay, so we are now going to invite the artists in the room that got their works exhibited to join us on the talk.
Should we move from the panel? Or?
Yes, if you don't mind.